Welcome to Fast Break, an African-based basketball podcast where we have entertaining, thought-provoking and unfiltered conversations on the game and the culture of basketball.
Welcome back to another episode of the show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm here with Koketso, Selepe, and Shine, Emmanuel. I'll alternate between the three throughout the show, depending. And today we're going to get into something very, very dear to my heart. I think it's a very special time, the BAL. And we recently wrapped the third season, wrapped in Kigali a couple of days ago. And personally, I was very shocked by the results, but let's get into it. First things first, how are you guys just generally feeling about how things played out?
Firstly, can the producer put something for me there also? Like, I see that Cook is a Brooklyn native, Selepe Laker diehard. Nothing for me.
So, how are you feeling? That was the question, right? Let me just say that I entered the tournament with so much high hopes for the Cape Town Tigers because that's the team that I supported coming into the tournament. That's the team that ripped South Africa, so it was quite natural for me to support it. And for them to lose at the same, like they lost at the same level as last year. So one could say, did they really improve? You know? But beyond that, it was exciting because it was unpredictable. I thought Pedro was going to win. I thought like the biggest challenge actually for the Tigers was going to be Petro De Luanda. So for them to not even make it to the finals and even come fourth, I was like, okay, this is a competitive, season and league.
What about you, Selepe? You were in Kigali, got to experience it front row. How do you feel?
It was in for one.
In court, not even front row.
I think first of all, I'm sorry for disappointing you, Koketso. It wasn't our intention. I just genuinely think that the Basketball African League is extremely, extremely competitive. You cannot dictate beforehand what's going to happen. I mean, coming into the conferences, everybody was saying that the Nile Conference is the harder conference, and if you look at the Sahara Conference, that you had 5 teams with a record of 3-2, so it had to go to an Excel spreadsheet or scientific calculator. I don't know what they used, but it had to go to some kind of calculation to determine who the top 4 team were. And US Monastir, the defending champions, end up missing up on a playoff spot. And that just goes to show that you cannot prescript what's going to happen. I think it's getting more and more competitive. We're seeing a lot more teams coming into the fold. We're seeing a lot of younger players just stepping up, and I talk about Alou Diarra. Coming into the Basketball African League, nobody was thinking that there's going to be a 6'9" forward center from Mali to just run riot and average a double, which is very difficult on this continent. So I just think it's fulfilling the mandate of unearthing the hidden talents, the hidden treasures that we have on the African continent.
What about you, Shine?
First of all, I like the fact that we've had 3 seasons of the BAL and we've not had one team win it back to back or even win it twice. It also goes to show that we've had Angola for the longest time as the country, but then in the basketball country, and they are. However, Egypt has come and shown that they can win it twice now. They've won the BAL twice as Zamalek and now Al-Ahly. It was just, I don't know, man. It was like Selepe mentions, the Sahara Conference was a different beast on its own. And even the Nile Conference came down to the last day, second last day of games to figure out who's going to go through. I was a bit disappointed with the Cape Town Tigers, but we'll get into that also. Lots and lots of injuries. And it's good to see that we're getting more and more of the African players showcase their talents. Teams are starting to rely less on the American players or the imports, as they like to say, and more on the African players. And that's a very good thing. It goes to show that, we're on the rise.
Oh, interesting that you mentioned that. The ABC Fighters had an all-African roster, which I think is very surprising because they were a really, really strong contender, in my opinion, and they fell short literally in the last few seconds, what do you guys think actually is the message that they sending out, I guess, with having an all-African roster? Because I think, in my opinion, they showed that you don't need American players to win on the continent. And maybe the way to go for different teams is to kind of have the core built around players who are maybe from Africa, or showing that we've got the talent there. What do you think?
If I can just jump in there. When I
Yeah.
watched that game and I saw obviously that they had an all-African core, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Glory Road.
I don't know.
No, I haven't.
So it's a basketball movie, obviously, in America during the civil rights movement, and the coach tried to prove a point, and he played only the African players in the finals, and they won. I mean, I'm not saying Liz Mills was trying to do the same, but that's what I thought of, when I saw an all-African roster. Nevertheless, it's still very difficult. I mean, especially if you consider that not every African country who was represented there is playing in a competitive league of 60 games or so a season. So you still somewhat need the imports or the local players who've got experience abroad just to sort of like bring that mixture in. We've seen it in all the teams that have won so far. They've had that mixture. They've had, it's come from obviously the teams that have played in competitive leagues or still playing in competitive leagues, 60 plus games as a team in the regular season. So it's a good thing what they're trying to do, but I hope that this is also a continuation to try to improve the basketball league in Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah, I agree with Shine. I mean, I think, yes, Coach Liz Mills is trying to make a statement, but I think there's a lot for us Africans to learn from the imports, because they, have better experience with resources, with coaching, with different styles. So it's a great statement to push, but I think it takes away from what our African players can learn. I remember I was speaking to you, Slep, and saying like, you guys are actually learning a lot from your coach, who's an import, but also the players around you. Like, they've played with so many different systems that have won internationally. So, and they bringing it here, which is so much which is great for us because we get to learn from the best. I think it works if we all work together. And honestly, yes, it's a good statement to have, but I would love to have the best players in the world just play in the BAL. It doesn't have to be like just African players or exclusive to African players, but just anyone who's great at basketball to play in the BAL. That is what I would love to see.
I mean, I think as a minimum, every team is gonna have 10 out of the 12 players African based, because of the 4 imports that you have, 2 of them have to be African imports. I mean, I'll give you Cape Town Tigers. Hello?
No, I'm saying please clarify the rules regarding that, because the core has to be African, right? It has to be home based, and then like only a few. There's a maximum amount of imports that you could have or can have in a team.
Yes. So you allowed 4 imports, and of the 4 imports, 2 of your imports have to be African-based imports. So I'll give you an example. Cape Town Tigers have Michael Binije, who's from Nigeria, and Evans Kanapamo, who's from Central African Republic. And then we had Zaire Wade and Josh Hall, later on Marvin Smith Jr. joining the team. So 10 out of the 12 players on any roster are going to be African based, and I think that's a good message sent out by the league to just say it's an African league, so most of the players on the team are going to be of African descent at least. But coming to what Coach Liz Mills did, she's an advocate of saying we have the talent on this continent. Unearthing that talent and finding that talent is something that requires somebody that's like Coach Liz Mills invested in Africa. She got one of her former players from Kenya. She got one of the former players that she worked with at AS Saleh from Morocco. You're not going to know those players if you don't travel the continent, if you don't play on the continent, if you don't work on the continent. Did she send a message? She really did send a message. Do I love the message? Yes. I'm a big advocate of that message, because if we only have 12 teams, you can't only have 12 countries represented. You know what I'm saying? She's finding the best players irrespective of what country they're from, and she's leaning more towards African imports for the four imports positions that she has. And I say kudos to her, because if you watch that quarterfinal against Petro De Luanda, I mean, they almost caused an upset, and I have it on great authority that they laid down the blueprint for AS Duanes to come a few days later and eventually upset Petro De Luanda. So, Coach Liz Mills, she may not have gotten the success story that you want, but the narrative that she pushed is the narrative that's very aligned to why the BAL was created.
Do you agree, Cindy? We can't hear you. We can't hear you. No.
No, we can't hear you.
Reading your lips.
Yes.
That's what's happening. Yes. No, still.
I think the producer's in on this.
Why is Liz sabotaging Cindy like that?
Producer, he's in Cancun. Please bear with us.
Okay, anyway, so guys, Selepe, wait, did you have anything to say about your season? You did apologize and stuff, but let's talk about the the BAL Awards, right?
Okay.
Surprising, but not surprising, right? I'm going to start with what I found really surprising. I'm like, let's just get into it, right? The coach of the season was the coach of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, Shine, are you disagreeing? You think this coach deserved it?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Guys, okay,
1000%
what are your reasons? What are your reasons?
But he deserved it because, firstly, like Selepe said, obviously ABC Fighters set the precedent for obviously AS Duan upsetting Petro De Luanda, who were favorites. But this is also a coach who, I mean, look at the adjustments he made. So you speak about JJ Boissy being Defensive Player of the Year. This is a guy who was coming off the bench, barely getting minutes. They put him on the roster, getting 20 points a game, playing some of the hardest defense I've seen. That still requires some level of coaching, and to make sure his team gets to the finals of the BAL when they were not even, I mean, they were 3-2 in Senegal. And then they come to Kigali and cause this upset of knocking Petro De Luanda. He had time to work and make the right adjustments, especially that Boissy adjustment. That is big for me, and it takes a coach who knows his team. It takes a coach who is willing to make certain sacrifices to get there. And ultimately, that's a recipe for a coach of the year.
I think.
So to add, sorry, Cookie, to add on to that. So started, AS Duanes started 0-2, right? At home, in Dakar, at Senegal, they started 0-2. And one of the biggest calls of the season was when the coach decided, listen, I'm going to get rid of Stoglin. Tyrone Stoglin is one of the best scorers to have played in the Basketball African League. Yeah. Him and Will Perry are the only guys to have scored 40 points in a game. And he said, I'm going to cut this guy. He's not good for my team. I mean, that's a huge call to make when you're 0-2. He goes and they win 3 games in a row. One of the games that they won was against US Monastir, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's one of the reasons why. That's why one of the reasons why US Monastir bowed out of the conference stages, because of this coach and because of AS Duanes. And then they go on to upset the favorites. You defeat the defending champions in group stages, and then you defeat the former finalists and the favorites in the semifinals. I mean, that it went without saying for me. I mean, he was bold. He made brave decisions. He was unapologetic about what was better for AS Duanes, and shout out to him for just putting Senegal back up there, because in the previous seasons, Duke and AS Duanes in the first season, I don't think they made a much of a statement in terms of success in the Basketball African League like they did this year.
But also, I mean, I know I've been raving about this Boissy kid, but even that also, to take a homegrown talent and decide, I'm going to put him on the stage here, because I remember after the first 2 games that they lost, a lot of the Senegalese natives were shouting and calling out for the coach to play more local players. And one of the players was him, Boissy. I think he was averaging 13 points off the bench at some stage. And then you bring him on and it makes a world of a difference after getting rid of Terence Stoglin. Like, that's coach of the year. That's Greg Popovich. Shout out to Spurs.
Wow. So you guys have raised great points, right? Great points. But at the end of the day, guys, this is sports, right? We all love a David Goliath story. We all love an underdog story. But in sports, the ultimate goal is to win. And I feel like the coach of the year was named very early. I think it should have been named like after the finals because the coach who won the finals, that's a second time winning.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
Okay,
two out of three.
but
2 out of 3. So because, and I'm not taking anything away from like the reigning coach of the year, but like I feel like the Al Ahly coach, because he won with Zamalek, went to Al Ahly,
Yeah.
won it again as well. So why are we taking that away from him? I think just because of that, he should have won coach of the year. But Cindy disagrees. I don't
I
know why.
disagree a lot because Al Ahly has proven itself that it's their first appearance in the BAL, but they're a very strong team, and they have very experienced players. Their bench is deep, and Senegal has been not a good basketball country, not a good basketball team. They haven't won in over 20 years, older than I am, and for him to kind of turn
Whoa,
things around
damn,
and
Cindy. I'm sorry.
exactly, like it's a drought. So if you think of the fact that like you guys mentioned, he made decisions to kind of change the way they were playing, and he listened to the outside factors. Sure, I think in the final game there were circumstances outside of his control with the fouls and everything that kind of altered. I think it could have been a fair game if there was less fouls and they could have played four quarters. But I think the disciplining in the beginning kind of messed them up, and maybe that may have ruined his campaign. But up until that point, I think 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, and not taking anything away from Egypt, but I think his decision making and ability to kind of play the right pieces, like you said, listening and putting Boissy on for him to then have, I think, a 33-point performance against US Monastir. I think that's commendable, and he deserves Coach of the Year.
So
So I
guys,
just want to say, it's
wait,
coach of
hold
the
on.
year. I know we give MVP to the player, the best player on the winning team. Coach of the year is not necessarily about winning a championship. It's
Yes,
about
because
whoever was
what you
able to
guys,
prove that they're the best coach. And it normally
but
goes with what you have is your team and what you're able to produce.
but guys,
That's fair.
how do you measure the best coach? How do you measure that? It's winning,
I
no?
think that's what it is. What you have on your roster, or whatever history you have with the team and all of that, the adjustments you're able to make to put your team in a position to be successful. Alali came into this already, if we're being honest. Everybody looked at it as in it's going to be Alali and Petro De Luanda in the finals. The expectation was already set there because it doesn't mean the coach is not great, don't get me wrong. He had already put that standard there from the Nile conference, you know. And here we have a team, like Slepper said, you start 0-2 at home, you make serious adjustments, cutting arguably your franchise player in order to go a step further. I mean, come on. He went more than a step further.
So because you're joining a strong team and you manage to win with them, that's not as commendable as I'm trying to understand, because had he
Coach,
lost
okay,
with that strong team, it was going to be like, this coach sucks. You know what I mean?
but he didn't.
So
But that's a double standard, Shine. Are you not seeing what I'm?
No,
I get
I
I,
think
I get what coach
with a
is
lot of
saying.
awards, sorry, Slipper, with a lot of awards, we think because we give it to one player or one coach, sorry, it means that the other coach isn't good. I don't think that's what it is. You know, the coach, the Alali coach is great. I mean, this is the same guy who's coached in the Euro League also, and he's been successful there. You know, it doesn't mean he's not good. And he's already won in Egypt now. So we know next year Alali is coming, not just because they're defending champions, but they're also defending their title in Egypt. You know, so this coach has proven himself. He's won, like you mentioned. But I think when you speak about coach of the year, it goes over and above just who has won. But it's like who has taken their team to get there, who has most improved their team, who has given what they had, the expectations that are set. And I mean, it's all about a story, if we're being honest, right? We see it almost everywhere sometimes with who wins the best player, who wins this. There's always a story attached to it, and this is the story. And I don't think it's any knock on the Lali coach. I think he's a great coach, as is proven. But I think this was the coach of the year. Probably
Okay.
gay.
I think maybe we should agree to disagree, because one thing I want your guys' opinion on is Defensive Player of the Year, Aliou Diarra. Like Selepe mentioned, he averaged a double-double. And if I'm not mistaken, he's 22 years old. He plays at he's he plays at the center. I think
That's
I
6'9".
misjudged. I think I misjudged him a lot based off of his frame, based off of how African basketball is. But damn,
Yeah.
a real force in the paint, both ends of the court. What do you guys think? Well deserved as anyone else?
He's just a high energy player, man. I mean, you play against him, you see him play. The skill set can get better. I think he's going to get better with time. As you mentioned, he's still young, but you can't match his energy. You know, he just keeps on coming. You box him out, he's gonna come out again and again. You know, sometimes you box someone out the first 3, 4, 5 times, and you think, okay, he's got the message. I don't want him to crash the ball. He's coming on the 8th, 9th, 10th
Yeah.
time. He's trying to maintain his 12 rebounds per game. He's trying to maintain his 18 points per game. He's doing every single thing to make sure that at the end of the game, his team is over the line. You know, when you have a forward or a center who's going to box out, get the rebound, outlet the pass, run down the floor for a dunk, you know you have an athlete that's determined. And I think Defensive Player of the Year for Aliou Diarra, shout out to him. It's just a tick box and a star on his determination and his drive that he had for his team, and he took them all the way to a bronze medal, which was, I mean, something that nobody could have predicted ahead of time. So shout out to them.
Yeah, I agree with Slep. I mean, like I don't think there's anyone who's like close to him in terms of defensive player of the year. Yes. Right. I think it was like cut out straightforward. It has to be him. I think he's the first player to register like 8 straight double doubles. That was incredible for me. After that, I was like, not only is he defending, but he's also contributing on the offensive end. Like what else? As his teammate, like what else do you want from him? And we like to talk about intangibles. He has those intangibles. I mean, Slepe was talking about his energy. That's what you guys, I don't know what else to say. Like it was like straight out flat. It had to be him.
Oh, look, I don't agree that it was cut out Aliou Diarra. I think Dundao, I mean, that man is such a pleasure to watch. Smallest guy on the court, the energy he gives Petro De Luanda. I wasn't going to be surprised if it was him as Defensive Player of the Year. You know how you say you cross a player, you keep him by your hip, and he's back there again ready to take a charge. And then you cross him again, you drop him, and he's back there again. And you can see the amount of energy he brings on the court when he's on for Petro. So much so that, like you mentioned, he will not only just do the work defensively, but even his pace and pushing the ball up back on offense because of the defense he's just played. I don't think the Defensive Player of the Year, Diarra, is undeserving, but I do believe that, in my opinion at least, in my humble opinion, it should have been Dundao. That man is, he terrorized every point guard he came across. You know, even those who were slightly bigger than him. And it's great to know that, he's also quite young. So there I have to disagree with you guys.
And I'm not mad at your disagreement, because my jock was also very exceptional on the defensive end for Petro De Luanda. You had that what's his name, Dane Miller from Slack.
Yes.
He was also averaging like 3 steals. I think he led the league in steals, and he missed out on a spot on the All BAL defensive team. And he was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, but he didn't win it. You know, it's a coin toss at the end of the day. But I think what was looked at is the longevity of how long Diarra did it for and what he had around him. I think it's a bit easier for my jock and Chill Dundao to play defense because they're on a team that's very sound defensively. Whereas for Aliou Diarra, he was the anchor. He was the reason why they are sound defensively. He was the driving force to their defense. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I still stand with Diarra for Defensive Player of the Year.
Look, I'm not saying it's undeserving. He definitely deserves it. But, I mean, for me, I thought if I was the one choosing, thank God I'm not, he would be number 2.
Okay. I'm really glad that you kind of mentioned you guys mentioned those two because they made it to the all defensive BAL team along with Samkelo Cele from the Tigers and
Shout out.
I'm pretty happy with this all defensive team. Not surprised at all. I think, yeah, they made.
Can I just say something?
Yes. What do you have to say?
The Samkelo one. I need to touch on that.
Yes.
It's so ironic that his handle is I am bucket, and boy, he gets buckets. Don't get me wrong, he's a walking bucket. But it is so rare to find somebody who's such a prolific scorer be a good defender too. You know, like
Yeah, you're just speaking
it's
about
so
it.
good to watch. You know, and the fact that he's also a local player from South Africa makes it even better. And he's young, so and he's just so athletic. He gets up like he's got springs. You know, it's like he's sleeping on mattresses or trampolines. I don't know. That's very good to see. Like I am buckets should now change it to I am defense. And buckets.
I am both.
I am both.
I agree with you,
defense and buckets.
It's just I was very surprised by Samkelo, guys, because I would like Peter Princely to play that role in the Tigers, that center or post role, but he seems to be playing outside. And the first time I saw Samkelo play to watch him play inside, I'm like, there's a high disadvantage. How's this guy going to manage with all these African players who, you know, like are more physical, like, you know, the way the body looks, just more bigger than him. And I just genuinely thought more athletic than him, but he's incredible. He's incredible. Offense, defense, and he has that level of confidence where even though he's young, even though it's his first season in the BAL, he doesn't care, bro. Like, I'm still gonna shoot over you, or I still want that rebound. I don't care how you know what experience you have. I'm here to play. We're here to play. It's so incredible. And I think the biggest thing that stood out for me is I like players that have like short-term memory. Like whenever he misses a bucket, it doesn't get to his head. He misses a bucket and he goes back for defense. Like it's so crazy.
I think he's basically in his mind. He said he's the greatest even before he's been called the greatest.
Yeah, like
so he plays like it, and that's
easy.
a serious mentality to have as an athlete.
He's 26 years old.
Damn.
That's crazy.
Turns 26. He turns 26 end of the year.
I think the
He's
interesting
25.
thing with like the all defensive team is I think all of them bring a different energy that kind of alters the game and the pace. And whether it's not a steal, it's a deflection, it's a block. And I think that was pretty evident with Samkelo, with actually everybody, even if they'll take the charge, which was very surprising because especially with Samkelo and Dundao, they're not the biggest guys on the court, but they take every single charge and they just get at it every single time. So I think that was very, very commendable. And I really wish that the BAL like announced the whole all BAL defensive team like the way they announced some of the other awards, because I think, wow, they deserve that kind of stage because we kind of had to filter through a lot of things to kind of get to them. And I think that's such an important team to make. So just small note there. And then one of my favorite players in the BAL, he won, was it Ashes? He won the Ashes MVP last year, actually, very interestingly. Will Perry, I think he had the highest points this season, 41 points. I think he's one of the smallest guys in the BAL too. He won Sportsmanship Award. I'm very happy that he won it. I think he's a great addition to the league, the team. What do you guys think?
So we when he scored that 41-point effort, we were playing the next game. And we get to the venue quite early, so we sit and we watch the game that's currently playing. Guys, I kid you not, this guy couldn't miss a bucket. You know, Will Perry we know him to be a lights out shooter, but to do it at the BAL in a game where, you know, it's either you win or the chances of you going through to the next round are very, very slim, you know, and he just, I think he shot 9 of 13 from outside, you know, he was 10 of 10 from the free throw line. He had a couple of and ones. He really, really played aggressive. And you can see for Will Perry, it's a tough adjustment playing with other guys because he lost Jamal Kennedy, his former teammate who's currently playing in Britain, I think it is. They had a very good backcourt combination. So he's finding his way with playing with other guys, and he just goes about it very, very well, you know. And it was a 41 point game with 9 assists, you know. Will Perry, shout out to
Yeah,
him, bro, for his structure and the way he approaches the game. He really is just one of the guys that I think at least it would be very, very nice to play with.
I mean,
I'm
also you look at the fact that he's everybody had basically counted Beira out. If you remember Road to Bar last year, they were riddled with a few injuries. They also made a lot of adjustments to their roster. And I don't think anybody would have said, okay, looking at the now conference, these guys are going to make it to Kigali in the playoffs. And look, when they needed him, he came through and did whatever he had to do to make sure he gets his team over the line. And that type of play, 41 points is no joke, even at Varsity Cup where things count twice during that time.
Level
Those
up,
2 minutes.
level up,
So,
level up, level up,
so
level
he's
up.
able to do that in the playoffs. I mean, he's able to do that, in the now conference, and then able to carry that through to make sure his team gets through to the playoffs, which is something everybody had counted them out of. That man is a serious baller. I give him his flowers. And like you say, Selepe, he approaches the game with, he's such a professional, and even his court awareness, how he's able to find players, make those shots. 9 assists is no easy feat in any league you play in. Even if it's NBA Sunday or, you know, you're just playing with the guys, pick up basketball. No one's getting 9 assists in one game.
I'm struggling to understand how this award is given, right? Sportsmanship award. But with Will Perry coming into the BAL, I mean, my only memory of him was Road to BAL because I didn't get the chance to see him at Ashes. And at the Road to BAL, I was told that this guy's a shooter. And unfortunately for me, that didn't translate in the road to ball. It didn't translate. I didn't see him as a lights out shooter. If anything, it didn't translate for me. And then the BAL, the big tournament, I see his performance, and I was quite impressed. He became the guy that, you know, they described him as the guy that played in Ashes. Yeah, him. I think that's very premature, but
Wim Perry.
but he, guys, 41 points. I think he had. Wait, I wrote it down here. Actually, he had the most 3 points the most 3 points in a single game, which is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
But
Clay Thompson.
Again, what does this mean for this? Like, what does this award mean? Sportsmanship, okay.
I think you can't deny that basketball goes further than just what you do on the court. You might not be aware of it because you don't religiously follow him on social media. And a lot of guys who do a lot of community work don't exactly do it to be seen. You know, and he's one of those because, I mean, he, like Selepe said, he lost his teammate who went to play in Britain. He stayed in Mozambique. He's still living there. I mean, he's probably doing a lot of outreach stuff there that we're unaware of. So maybe that's what it is.
I guess. I think that's the only thing that set me back. I'm not taking, like, he's an incredible player, but I was like, but what does this award mean? What do we, because there's so many players who can be, you know, who could have won that award. Like, what is it exactly?
Okay, there are many players who could have won the Defensive Player of the Year award too. It just is what it is. That's how the cookie crumbles. This man deserved it, and he got it.
But we actually need to understand the sportsmanship award, guys.
I think we'll make a note.
Come 10 seasons in, we're gonna start questioning them. But like, guys, like, this is a sorry award because it's like, I don't know. It's giving Spirit Cup. Guys, remember?
Let's
You're calling this man a cheerleader.
Let's make a note and we'll discuss it. We'll have a discourse in the comments to see what other people think and maybe do a little research about what it exactly means. But maybe we'll find out what sportsmanship means and basically his story leading up to now. But the team that won it all, I think, shocked me. Not shocked that I didn't think it would be them. I knew they had a chance, but very shocking. The finals, Al Ali beat AS Douane 65-80. MVP
So I think
well deserved in my opinion. And what do you guys think? How did you guys expect that game to play out? And what were your thoughts? Selepe, we'll start with you.
I think if you don't anticipate that Al Ahly would at least get to the finals, then you may have ignored a sign or two. Because if you look back at the Nile
All
conference,
three.
they all three they had beaten Pedro de Luanda, and then Gonzalez caught the ball off an offensive rebound from a missed shot from Carlos Moraes, and he just tapped it back in on the buzzer. You know, they were 0 point something seconds away from beating Petro De Luanda, who were the favorites. So they showed their pedigree in conference basketball. And I think everybody had anticipated at least that it would be a Pedro Al Ahly final. AS Douane has happened. And when that happened, I think the writing was almost on the wall because Al Ahly could then breathe a sigh of relief because tactically and strategically, one of the only teams that can push Al Ahly to that limit is Pedro de Luanda. You know, I mean, those two teams were head and shoulders the best teams in the BAL, in my opinion. Pedro de Luanda may have just run out of steam, I think, and been overpowered in Kigali, which happens most of the time when the bulk of your team is a veteran team, I think. But you know, Anunua Amot is just a scoring forward. He's, you know, that's what the guy gets a bucket. You
Baller.
know, he can put the ball on the floor. He can post up. He can face you up in the low block. He can shoot a three. I mean, his skill set is amazing. We played against him. I was like, I don't think there's a thing this guy can't do. You know, he can get a bucket in many different ways, and he's a rebound threat because of his 6'8", 6'9" figure. But I mean, his skill set, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up playing in the NBA, you know, and one day because he really is that kind of guy.
Okay.
Well, first of all, this was no surprise. The minute I saw Petro De Luanda struggling, I knew. And you're going up against an Egyptian team that beat Zamalek in a 3-game series already. Zamalek was like in the finals just last year. I mean, sorry, they won it 2 years back. And then Zamalek also played them in the Egyptian league and they beat them convincingly. So they come into this and like Selepe said, they basically won, but also Selepe, the game's not over until it's over. They basically won. I mean, they basically lost it in the last split seconds. This team is very well balanced. And I mean, before we even get to the MVP, you've got guys coming off the bench like, what's his name? Webster, who just shoots lights out. You've got a 7-footer coming off the bench to replace another 7-footer in order to be on the floor. You've got, like, you know, you just, and they've got one of the smartest point guards I've seen. Like, the way he's able to control the floor, make the passes. And then you've just got these other guys that are they just have dogs in them, you know. They're just ready to attack the rim whenever. They're ready to get rebounds, put their bodies on the line. That is a very well-oiled machine. And I mean, now that they're already coming back next year, they're going to go as favorites. And I think the advantage they have over your defending champions like Monastir or the previously defending champions is they've got a young team, a younger team also, you know, and they can go the distance. I mean, when they took this break from the Nile conference to the playoffs, they went back and won the Egyptian. They went back and won the Egyptian league again to qualify them for next year. These guys have legs under them and they're able to come back and do this. But this Amat guy, there's nothing you can't do, man. His figure, his skill set, everything. I'm just excited to see what he's going to do with this country at the Basketball World Cup later this year. But that man, MVP. Like,
I agree.
Clear-cut MVP.
I agree. For me, because I expected Al Ahly and Pedro de Luanda final. Because when they matched up, that was a really close game. So I thought this is definitely a final. Because even the coach said, if you want to watch the best game in the league this season, go watch Al Ahly and Pedro de Luanda. For him, that was the best. So he knew when Pedro didn't make it to the finals, he knew that, okay, this is, guys, if we lose, it's on us. Because we can definitely beat all the other teams, right? I think for a final, though, oh my goodness. I personally did not enjoy. I enjoy a close final. I just hoped that you know, like AS Dunes actually, I don't know. I just wanted I expected a game 7-esque type of game. Not a blowout. I wanted the game to be decided in the fourth quarter. I don't want to step into the second half knowing, guys, this game is over. I'm just watching because I'm here now. I expect it to be entertaining and competitive. For me, after the first half, I knew it was done. Because you can
But-
even see with the other team, like mentally, they were broken. Yes, they were fighting, but they were defeated from the first, from like they were just defeated. From the first quarter, they were defeated. So I knew from the second half, like I'm just watching because I started the game, might as well finish it. And for a final, I didn't enjoy it.
I think
I agree
you've
with
got
that.
to give credit to how that Alaki team is also built. The reason why I think AS Douane struggled was because they came off a very difficult semi-final already. Like their path in Kigali was not the easiest. There was not one game where it's like, okay, they won it convincingly. They fought really hard for every win, and then you come up in the final against a team similar to the Denver Nuggets, well rested, very well built. Every player can hurt you, and then you've got a player like Omantu you also have to worry about. And then on top of that, you lose some discipline and pick up fouls early. It was written in the stars.
I agree with you guys for the final, but in terms of them making it to the final, I think their conference play, they started off really strong, and sometimes they would pull ahead, but sometimes they'd let the team come back. I mean, they let a team come back from 21-point deficit. So that's where I was unsure about how things would play out. A 30-point deficit. So they're a great team, but I saw them kind of maybe take the foot off the gas. But I think like the foul trouble that AS Douane got into in the first 5 minutes of the game, I think that messed them up mentally because then they didn't know what to do. Started shooting from 3. I think at some point they were only like 2 of 24, shooting really badly. And I think as soon as like their star guard was out, just so many things just started happening. Boasi kind of hurt his ankle. There was just like so many niggles. And I think after halftime, there was nothing they could have done, unfortunately. But Omot, well-deserved MVP. No surprises at all. And like Shine said, I'm so excited to see him compete for South Sudan. And wow, like he had an amazing game. And I think he did lead Al Ahly in scoring, just head and shoulders. And that's, I think, such a big stat because I think leading a team in scoring is something, but leading a team that everybody can score from everywhere on the floor and you're still the leading scorer, I think that says a lot. So can't wait to see what he does next. And then one last but not least, BAL Elevates. So the NBA Academy drafted some players to join some of the BAL teams. And I think a lot of the players, it wasn't just like, I don't say Spirit Cup, but just participation, just to have them on the roster. They really competed and they had really amazing runs, I think, with a lot of the teams. Kaman Maluach made it all the way to the finals with AS Douane, but unfortunately he got fouled out. And also, they had a BAL Elevate game where they beat the local team. So they had a second showcase in Africa. And they played really, really well. They beat one of the local pro teams. And did you guys catch any of the game? Who do you guys think are the standouts from the BAL Elevate program? And what do you guys think?
There's a kid from Stade Malien, from the BAL Elevate team.
Ruben Chinyelu.
That Ruben kid. I was watching, unfortunately, the game against the Tigers. And there was a break in possession, and they passed the ball to him. He was in the no-charge zone on offense. They passed the ball to him. The way he got up, like complete back scratcher. I thought I was watching Dominic Wilkins' reincarnated again, like on the courts in Africa. Like it was like such a human highlight reel. He got up with so much ease, cocked it all the way back, 2 hands, almost broke the rim. Marvin Smith Jr., I think his name is, was even shook standing under the rim after his turnover. So that kid, that Ruben kid, and there's that Chomche guy also. He is a baller. Like, it's good to see that we have all these kids now in Africa who don't just go to the NBA because they're 7 foot and this and that. But these guys can cross, they can shoot, they can dunk. You know what? I've said enough.
So I mean, my NBA Elevate kid didn't even play in the NBA Elevate game this year. Terry Darlin. My BAL, I mean, see, my BAL Elevate kid, he's going to the G League Ignite team. I mean, a 6'7" point guard with handles. I mean, if you look at his highlight reel, you'll even see me on the bad side of that highlight reel. I mean, that kid is a hooper, guys, and I mean, he's adamant about being an NBA player that's not there to just rebound and run. He wants to be a point guard. He wants to be the first point guard to make it into the NBA from Africa. And I think sky's the limit for that kid. He keeps his head in the right place. He's going to go on to achieve a lot of great things. And with that said, I mean, the rest of the BAL Elevate kids are hoopers, guys. I mean, you look at Bobby Kabamba, who was on our team. I mean, there were plays that he made in our quarterfinal and in our elimination game against City Oilers in the
Yeah.
conference. I mean, he's making big plays, and they're not scared of the stage. Even, I mean, Ruben Chinedu, like he's saying, he's a hooper. I think he's already signed for Washington State. He's already committed to go play NCAA college. These kids are ballers, bro. Chomche can play inside and outside.
Yo,
Also the kid that played for AS Duanes, their center. I forgot what his name is.
he's
He is a
16.
hooper. He's
He's
16, 7 foot tall. I mean, guys, to say sky's the limit is an understatement for some of these kids. These kids are going to go to the NBA and they're going to belong there.
Koki?
I have thoughts. I honestly have thoughts regarding that because I like what the BAL Elevate program is doing because it's giving young kids an opportunity to play basketball professionally from Africa. That's amazing. Like that is, as basketball fans, that's what we want, right? We hope, or we wish we were given that opportunity. So for that program to exist right now, it's amazing. With Thierry, I'm so glad you mentioned him, Selepe, because my thoughts are this is a great basketball player, right? And as an African player to be in the G League as a point guard is crazy. That's like going to Europe as an African man and playing striker. Very rare, right? Because they see Africans as centers, as defenders. So it's quite incredible because that means you are as a point guard, you are sound, right? My problem with that, and I don't know if it's valid. Would like to get your thoughts. I want to say this. I want to be politically correct, right? How do you guys feel about our best players say, like, yeah, how do you guys feel about us saying that our best African players should go to the NBA? Like, are
I
we not
mean,
saying, are we like, we wish they play for the BAL? Like,
As a player,
mm-hmm.
you want to play basketball at the highest possible level, right?
Okay.
The BAL is still in season 3. It's in its infancy level. It only runs and operates for 3 months. The NBA operates for a much longer period than that. And that means, to speak freely, getting paid for a much longer period. So if a player, especially as young as Terry Darlin, can get the opportunity to go play in the NBA, you want to see him go there. There's about 450 NBA players. Not all of them are going to come out of the African continent. There will be some very, very good players that stay in Africa. There will be others that leave. And I think whatever is the best possible situation for a particular athlete, that's what they should pursue. Some players will go to the NBA academy so that they can be superstars in the Basketball African League. Others will be superstars in Europe. Others will be superstars in the NBA. Wherever is best for them, wherever their sort of ceiling is, that's where they should operate, or maybe one step above that.
I think also we see every athlete. If you're the best in what you do, Olympians want to make like track athletes. They want to go to the Olympics because that's the bigger stage. You always want to make sure you're on the bigger stage so they can never question how great you can be. And in football, for example, you get all these Brazilian guys, these African guys. They still dream about playing in Europe because that's the bigger stage. And basketball is not different. It's not different. You still want to play in the NBA. That's the bigger stage. We're never going to say he's the greatest African player to have ever lived if he hasn't gotten a chance to show that in the NBA. And I think just as part of ambition also, and wanting to be an athlete who wants to leave his mark out there, that's the best platform to do it on. That doesn't mean that the African Basketball League, the Basketball African League, is not a great platform or anything like that. Like Selepe said, it's still growing, and I think eventually you start seeing many players who would rather stay in Africa and grow the league here. But I mean, it's 3 months compared to out of 12, as opposed to a 9-month contract in the NBA that can set you off for life. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And another thing, I think just in general life, there's no point in being the biggest fish in a small pond. I think he needs
Ain't
to
nothing
kind of,
small about the BAL.
it
Yeah,
is
it's not
right
a
now,
pond.
but
It's
it's
not a
gonna
pond.
grow.
Definitely not a
It's
pond.
gonna reach the 76th season, 77th season. But for now, I think he should, and as he should, kind of explore all the options that he's given, because this is something new. I mean, he's rated on one of the ESPN polls, or one of the polls, he's rated top 25 draft picks for next year. And if somebody's rated that high, I really think that they should go and play on that stage. And in the road to BAL, even, I think he averaged, for the qualifiers across like East and West Division, he had like the highest points. I may be mistaken, but I think he was top 3 in terms of scoring. Now, if you're doing that just in the qualifiers and you're a proven talent, I think the next step is G League. And in a year's time, we hope that we'll have a conversation that he's getting drafted and he's going to be kind of creating the path for other African players who maybe aren't in academy, maybe they are in the BAL. They're going to follow in his footsteps. So I think in terms of breaking barriers, boundaries, and everything, like you said, we're not always known as a point guard. So I'm really excited to see where he's going to take things. But I think that's all the time we have today. I think the producers...
No, sorry, can I just say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. This BAL season has been everything you want in entertainment, in quality of basketball, and just everything. I mean, you've had massive disappointment in defending champions being knocked out, a team winning on the buzzer, that team that was favorites not even going all the way, an emerging team coming, superstars getting dropped because the team thinks they're better off with the local players. You have a Glory Road type situation with Liz Mills. I am so excited. I just want the BAL to go on just a bit longer, to have just a bit more teams, because the entertainment I had was unexpected, first of all, and it was worth more than what I bargained for. So shout out to the BAL.
Fully agree. And side notes at the bottom, I would love if they maybe tried out for semifinals. Let's have a 3-game series, or finals,
Guys,
3 games.
This is FIBA. It's not the NBA. I highly disagree. Let's not make
many countries that follow FIBA
It
also
is.
do that.
It is actually not FIBA. It's a hybrid between FIBA and the NBA.
I think not a 7-game series.
We should follow FIBA
but 3.
rules, guys. Please.
No, but
No.
even many teams many FIBA countries also do a multiple game series
I
for
disagree.
the finals.
Let's stick to Olympic basketball rules, please. Thanks.
Koki's such a purist. That's why Nets are in Cancun. But you didn't hear that from me.
This has nothing to do. We're not doing it.
Hey guys, Cindy's trying to wrap up the show. What's wrong with you guys?
You come on. We need your voice to wrap up the show. Cindy, stage 6. Yeah, you see that stage 6 is definitely.
Our voice is gone again. On that note, be out of here.
Guys, because of load shedding, our host couldn't actually say goodbye, but it's okay. Okay. We have 3 other panelists. That's why we're all here. Thanks again for watching the fast break. We'll be back again. I mean, there's the NBA finals happening. So stay tuned. If you liked this episode, I mean, press that like button. If you have any comments, put them down in the comment section. If you agree, disagree, please. Actually, we'd like to know your thoughts, right? It's not a conversation amongst ourselves. You're also part of this conversation. What do you guys think? How did you feel about the BAL? Let us in on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, because we also like creating content. We are everywhere. Thanks again and goodbye.
That's it from us for this month's episode. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and being a part of this conversation. Don't keep it to yourself though. Share it with your friends and family, and let's all engage on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our handle is @FastBreakSA. To keep up with our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next month.